All right, we're back at it again. All right, seeing a place to be. Ric Serritella here for a jam-packed edition of this all-access football Friday show here on October 3rd, 2025. Broadcasting live from the confines of the Jersey Shore around the football universe. We're so happy to have you here each and every day. Buckle up, hunker down. We've got a jam-packed show for you today. We're streaming on the Twitter and YouTube platforms. Looks like we're having an issue on the Facebook side of things, so I do apologize for that. Hey, it's our 33rd edition of the All Access Football Daily Show. Got a couple of great guests for you lined up today. Coming up in about 20 minutes or so, we're going to have Will McFadden, senior editor and writer for the Atlanta Falcons website. And then at 10:45 a.m., we'll have Jason B. Hirschborn, who publishes The Leap, with the Green Bay Packers update. Of course, the Falcons and Packers on a bye this week. We'll get the lowdown on those two teams. All right. We'll also recap the Wild West affair that was Thursday Night Football last night. A lot to get to today. Of course, we've got NFL news and notes, but we're going to begin with the College Football Friday Night Lights edition here. And we're going to get right into it because there's so much to get to. Also, the Pro Football Hall of Fame announced their senior finalists. We'll get into some of that if we have time a little bit later on. All right, let's do it. Friday Night Lights, 5 games for you to consume tonight on the Football Friday affair. And we'll start off with Western Kentucky. They are 4-1 at Delaware, who took the jump up to FBS this year, 3-1. This one, a Conference USA affair, 7 p.m. on CBS Sports Network. Maverick McIver is somebody who we wrote up on the website over at All Access Football. He's a Senior Bowl watch list guy, and he is out to an electrifying start here in 2025. Through 5 games played, completing 66.7% of his passes, 1,474 passing yards, 11 touchdowns, and just 2 interceptions. He's a 25-year-old grad coming in at 6'1" and 6'8" inches, 207 pounds. From Abilene Christian, more of your pocket passer, great awareness, poise in the pocket, timing and placement. He is a bona fide day 3 prospect for the upcoming NFL draft. So signal caller to keep an eye on there at Western Kentucky at Delaware. Moving right along, we've got a AAC, American Conference football, with Charlotte 1-3 at USF 3-1. Okay, this one's going to be on ESPN2 at 7 p.m. And South Florida linebacker Mac Harris, he has been a Mac daddy, and we'll talk about Mac Jones, another daddy of the Mac. But this is Mac Harris, undersized linebacker at 6 foot, shade under, 235 pounds. But man, he has been playing with his hair on fire. 36 tackles through 4 games, including 4 sacks. He can play on the ball, off the ball, get after the quarterback, 2 forced fumbles, and a 93-yard interception for return. And, you know, these guys, these undersized playmaking linebackers, they're hard to get drafted. Linebackers as a whole are hard to get drafted, but you think of a guy like Marlowe Wax, very similar type of player out of Syracuse, undrafted free agent, making a name for himself for the Los Angeles Superchargers. So Mac Harris fitting in that mold, somebody to keep an eye on for Charlotte at USF. How about New Mexico out to a 3-1 start? They're at San Jose State, whose season has not gone as expected at 1-3. This is a Mountain West showdown at 10 p.m. over on FS1. And here, San Jose State quarterback Agate Walker, 6'3", 227 pounds, another Senior Bowl watch list. However, not playing very good this year, just 473 passing yards. I'm sorry. Well, he did have a very good week last week, 473 yards and 3 touchdowns against Stanford. But overall on the season, completing just 57% of his passes. That's an alarmingly low completion percentage. 473 yards, almost half of his season total, 1,187, 6 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Probably more of a priority free agent, but he'll be in an NFL training camp for sure. So that's another quarterback to watch here. New Mexico at San Jose State. The game of the night, this one's going to be at 10:30 p.m. over on ESPN. All times are Eastern. We're in New Jersey time here. Big 12 affair. West Virginia 2-3 at number 23 ranked BYU. The Cougars undefeated at 4-0, and linebacker Jack Kelly, 6'1" and 3/8 inches, 242 pounds. A mid-round draft pick, maybe a day 2 selection, and 19 tackles, 4 sacks, a forced fumble, and a sack in his last 3 games. And I definitely think Jake Kelly is somebody clearly on the NFL radar. Maybe the best prospect in action tonight. We shall see. And then one last one for you. 10:30 p.m. over on CBS Sports Network, right after Western Kentucky and Delaware. If you're up for this late night affair between Colorado State, 1-3 at San Diego State, 3-1. Remember, San Diego State shut out the Cal Bears a few weeks ago. I think it was like 24-0, 28-0. I like San Diego State to crush Colorado State. And cornerback Chris Johnson, not C2K, but Chris Johnson out of San Diego State comes in at 6 foot, 182 pounds, very fast, fluid hips, 23 tackles, 4 games played, a forced fumble, 3 pass deflections, 2 interceptions, including a 97-yard pick 6 to the house. And he's a bait and switch corner. He'll jump your routes. 34-0, by the way. San Diego State beat California. And again, Chris Johnson, another guy on the Senior Bowl watch list. So those are your Friday Night Light names you need to know. NFL Draft Watch prospects for the college football action going on tonight. All right. Now, we switch over to the NFL side of things. And, of course, we got Will McFadden coming up in about 10 minutes or so. So let me run through all of the news and notes. But first, we must recap that Thursday Night Football. I talked about the Mac Daddy, and Mac Jones, I would say, is probably the best or wisest $2.5 million investment in the National Football League. It's unbelievable. And San Francisco shrewdly signed him to a 2-year contract. He's on the books for next year at a very reasonable $4 million. And I don't know. I mean, with Brock Purdy's injury issues the last couple of years, they might want to hold on to Mac Jones. But San Francisco could be tempted by a trade this offseason, a team looking for a new signal caller. I would imagine you'd have to not only give up draft equity in a trade for Mac Jones, but then you'd also have to extend him because the way he's been playing, he's going to want more money. And Mac Jones did finish 33 of 49, 342 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Stafford, 30 of 47, 389 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. And so much for a low-scoring affair, huh? 26-23, the 49ers come out on top, I believe, was the final there in overtime. And this one, Sean McVay really frustrated with himself after the game. And I said this on my morning hit, when the game is on the line, you want the ball in the hands of your best player. And the Rams did not do that. They kept feeding Kyron Williams, who had the fumble. He ran into the wall there in overtime, and San Francisco wins this one. But also special teams, again, showing up big. This came down to special teams. I mean, the Cardi party, he missed the extra point. Then he missed a field goal. The St. Louis special teams fiasco, it's been brutal there. And they had a couple blocked kicks against Philadelphia that cost them the game. Now the kicker cost them the game once again. And you saw, the difference between a good kicker and a bad kicker. Eddie Pinheiro nailing the 59-yarder. He goes 4 of 4 on the night, executes all of his extra points and dings it there in overtime to seal the deal. But special teams, a big factor in the NFL this season. And Kendrick Bourne, he rebounded nicely. I saw a pass early in the game, bounced right off his face mask, right? But that was the only missed target. 11 targets, 10 catches, 142 yards for that Kendrick Bourne. CMC, 22 carries for 57 yards, 8 catches for 82 yards, and a touchdown. Jake Tongas, we told you, man, he's emerging as a playmaker there for San Francisco. He had a touchdown. Puka Nacua continues to do amazing things, the former 5th-round pick. Another 10 catches for 85 yards. Relatively mild game for Nacua. 1 touchdown. And Bryce Huff, we mentioned it, man. He's really stepped up his game, subbing in for Nick Bosa. He comes up with another big sack. I think that's about 3 or 4 games that Bryce Huff now has recorded a sack. All right, we're going to get our London prediction in the books as well, because they'll be playing on Sunday morning while we're live on the air. And, of course, tomorrow is the Saturday college football pregame show. But before we get Will McFadden up here, news and notes from the National Football League. We talked about Baltimore. They've got a lot of injury woes. Matabuke out for the season. Lamar Jackson with the hamstring did not practice. Neither did Kyle Hamilton, who now has a groin. Those 2 guys, they're the highest two paid players on the Baltimore Ravens. And, it's just littered. Just like the 49ers, Baltimore has 5 Pro Bowl players who did not practice yesterday, including Roquan Smith with the hamstring, Marlon Humphrey with a calf, Patrick Ricard with a calf. More Pro Bowl players on the injury report. Ronnie Stanley was limited with an ankle. Linderbaum limited with a calf. Kyle Van Noy limited with the hamstring. The Ravens are limping into this Sunday affair, and we'll see. They're trending in the wrong direction, that Baltimore Ravens. They got a tough Houston Texans team. Maybe they could pull it out. We'll talk about that on Monday. All right, Washington football team. We mentioned Terry McLaurin. He's been ruled out with the right quad injury. Noah Brown, the wide receiver, is out with the groin injury. Cornerback Mike Sainristil and wide receiver Deebo Samuel did not practice, but did make the trip over to L.A. They are expected to play, as is Jaden Daniels, who returns after missing the past 2 weeks. All right, Carolina, Chuba Hubbard, the Canadian sensation, he's out with a calf injury. Rico Dowdle, who signed in the offseason over from the Dallas Cowboys, will get the start for the Panthers this week. And then Trayvon Walker, he had left wrist surgery on Monday, considered day-to-day. Outside chance that he could still suit up and play against Kansas City on Monday Night Football. We'll have an update on that on Monday's show as well. All right. We're going to get a prediction in real quick. The Pro Football Hall of Fame announced 52 players from the senior category who advanced to the next round. Started with 162 players. That blue ribbon panel is going to cut this thing down 3 more times. But some interesting players on this list. We've talked about Roger Craig. I don't know how he's not in the Hall of Fame. 3-time Super Bowl champ. Had 1,000 yards rushing and 1,000 yards receiving back in 1985. And 410 scrimmage yards in Super Bowl games. Only Jerry Rice and Franco Harris have more. And then Ken Anderson, Cincinnati Bengals MVP, 4-time Pro Bowl quarterback, also moves on, as does Steve Tasker, arguably the greatest gunner in the National Football League from your Buffalo Bills. Circle the wagons. So those are just some notable names. The 3 finalists will be voted on the week before the Super Bowl. So this thing will get cut down 3 more times. And I know our good friend Frank Cooney almost single-handedly got Art Powell. Art Powell was a finalist last year. Frank Cooney really pushing heavily to get Art Powell in there. So those are your Pro Football senior finalists. All right, we're moving and grooving along the show. Will McFadden coming up in 5 minutes. Now, the London preview. All right, Joe Flacco out, Dylan Gabriel in for the 1-3 Cleveland Browns. Minnesota Vikings 2-2, still rolling with Carson Wentz wagon. And this is going to be going down in London, 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. The last time these 2 teams met was in 2021. Cleveland took that one 14-7. But Carson Wentz, 523 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Justin Jefferson starting to heat up. He had 10 catches for 126 yards last week. Of course, Wentz passed for 350 and 2 touchdowns. Jordan Addison with 114 yards in his season debut. Over on the Cleveland side, it's all eyes on Dylan Gabriel with Joe Flacco backing him up, not Shedeur Sanders. Quinshon Judkins had a season-high 115 scrimmage yards last week. He's got 237 rushing yards on the season. He's been a revelation for the Brownies. How about Isaiah Bond? What a story. He had a season-high 58 receiving yards last week. And another rookie, Carson Schlesinger, 8 tackles last week, the only rookie in the NFL with 8 tackles in 3 games this season. And he ranks second amongst all rookies with 29 total tackles. We did do the rookie watch earlier in the week. What's the line on this game? Do I not have the line? I didn't come prepared today. Look at this. We're going to pull up a quick line and prediction for you. That's what we do here on the Superfly edition of the NFL Draft Bible or All Access Football Show. And we have here Minnesota minus 3.5, over under very low, 36.5. You know, the hook scares me, but I like the Vikings here. I think they're going to be too much for Dylan Gabriel to handle. I don't think Alex Van Ginkel is going to play in this one. And Minnesota, remember, they were in Dublin last week. They've been hanging out overseas. They're a little more acclimated, I would think. And I think Minnesota is going to win this one. We'll go Minnesota 22. We'll go Cleveland 13 on the London game. 22-13 Vikings. That's the official pick. All right, so we got a lot in, and we're just 1/3 of the show down. And as I alluded to, we have Will McFadden from the Atlanta Falcons website is going to join us here in just a minute. Before we get to him, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we'll chop it up Atlanta Falcons style. Buckle up. Hey, RIC and a place to be. Ric Serritella checking in from the legendary Jersey Shore for the world-famous All Access Football, and you're tuned in to the All Access Football Daily Show, our newest venture here at the world-famous All Access Football, read by all 32 NFL teams and 50,000 subscribers from around the world. And I've been blessed and fortunate enough to work in this great game of football for the past 2 decades. It's our 24th season of providing you independent analysis when it comes to the NFL draft and everything pigskin, whether it's the NFL, college football, NFL draft, CFL, UFL. We'll be with you each step of the way, especially for draft season when we really get into high mode. Of course, it's all brought to you by the 2026 NFL Draft Bible, published in April, featuring over 500 in-depth scouting reports with our boots-on-the-ground analysis. We'll be on location at the All-Star Games, the NFL Scouting Combine, the Pro Day circuit, counting you down to that 2026 NFL Draft in Pittsburgh. And be sure you check us out over at allaccessfootball.com. We've got a great promo discount for you listeners at home. If you enter our promo code RICVIP, you'll get a 30% discount off of all of our premium content. You'll unlock the magic. Get our NFL Draft Insider Reports, Scouting Notebook, of course, the World Football All Access Football Report, published on Wednesday. It's your new home for real football talk. So follow along, give us a shout. We hope you're enjoying the show. If you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or X, please give it a like, a share, a subscribe, and we'll be with you each and every day here, 7 days a week, live, 10 a.m. Eastern, no days off, rain, sleet, hail, snow. The show must go on. For Ric Serritella and the All Access Football Daily Show, keep it locked, everybody. All right, we're back at it again. All right, seeing the place to be. Ric Serritella, telling it like it is when it comes to the NFL draft and everything pigskin. We're live 7 days a week, 10 a.m. Eastern. It is your home for real football talk, and we're so happy to have our next guest. He is a homegrown Atlanta sports writer, a former beat writer for the Atlanta Falcons. You may recognize him as a co-host for Believe in Falcons with Ovi McGelly, formerly the host there, currently the senior editor and staff writer for the Atlanta Falcons, now making his all-access football debut. Will McFadden joining the show. What's happening, Will?
What's up, Rick? Thanks for having me on. Yeah, that was quite the laundry list. I didn't realize I'd accomplished so much in the last couple of years. So you did a much better job reading that off than I would. I appreciate you having me on. Man.
Nice and crispy here on this Friday bye week edition. We pulled you out of the bye week to give us a Atlanta Falcons update and kind of gauge the temperature with what's going on with the Falcons down there in Atlanta, because I really felt like this was going to be a competitive team, a possible playoff team. We've seen some ups, we've seen some downs. I guess the big storyline coming into the season was the shift over to Michael Penix, now the full-time starter, taking over for Kirk Cousins, his first true offseason with the training camp under his belt. What's it been like? Give us a little Michael Penix report card. Has he played up to or below expectations? What do you think?
Yeah, Rick, I think maybe the best place to start is just the last two games for Michael Penix. And because in that, I think we saw a little bit of a microcosm of what I expected his season to be, which is against Washington, you kind of saw the ceiling, right? It over 300 yards, plus 75% completion percentage, made some really big throws in that game. But then you rewind the tape to Carolina a couple of weeks ago, and he looked rushed. He looked like he wasn't trusting what he was seeing. We know there were communication issues with kind of the offensive execution part of it. They made the adjustments to bring Zach Robinson, the offensive coordinator, down to the sideline to just kind of be closer to the action. I think we saw that pay off. So at this point in time, if I was going to give him like a grade or anything, it might be like a B, right? Because this is what I personally expected, which was just maybe the roller coaster of a young quarterback. And especially early on in the season, now this being the bye week, it kind of comes at a great time for Atlanta. A lot of people, when you initially got the schedule and it was like, wow, week 5 bye, if they're going to be in the playoffs, that would be great to have in week 10, 11, 12. But I looked at kind of the number of changes, especially a big change at quarterback, and said, if there's anything you want to tweak, you get the chance to do it early on in the season, and they are getting the chance to do that now. So I would expect that this last game against Washington is a little bit of a stepping stone for Michael Penix. I think it unlocks some of the things for this offense. And so if he's able to continue to play the way that he did last week, I really do think Atlanta's offense will quickly kind of move up in the rankings and kind of be around maybe that top 12 area, because I think that's their potential. Right now, though, the inconsistencies have kind of held them back in a couple of areas.
Yeah, good point. Bye week, make some adjustments. And that's interesting. So was he calling plays up in the booth and they brought him back down to the sideline?
Yeah, he has been ever since he came here last year. So that was the case with Kirk. That was the case with the first 3 games of Michael Penix. But it makes sense to have a young player. There's just so much stuff that goes on throughout a game, right? Yeah. And being able to kind of get in there right over your shoulder, be like, hey, here's what I'm seeing. Here's this, here's that. I'm going to go down and talk to Michael Petrie, the running backs coach, real quick. We're going to get a solution. So there's just so much that you can do when you're not up in the booth, even though I think the booth allows for more of a vantage point for strategy and X's and O's. And personally, that's where I might want to be, right?
Yeah.
But there's the player management part of it as well. And I think we definitely saw the benefits of that Sunday.
All right. Interesting stuff here. Will McFadden, senior editor and writer from Atlanta Falcons Media. And, the big knock on Penix coming out was the durability, right? Because he had so many injury woes, especially early on in his Indiana career. But we haven't seen that. He's been pretty sturdy and durable. And that brings me to my next question, I guess. You look around the NFL landscape, so many teams are down their starting quarterback, and teams like Cincinnati come to mind. And is there any chance that Kirk Cousins is shipped before the trade deadline, or is Cousins here to stay, or what would you say is the future of one Kirk Cousins?
Well, I mean, it kind of has been just like an offseason of leverage. It feels like if you're the Atlanta Falcons, if you're Kirk Cousins, if you're other teams in the league, when the season immediately wrapped up and it was pretty much made clear at the postseason press conference, Michael Penix is our quarterback moving forward. And then the natural question was like, well, where does that leave things with Kirk, right? And then you kind of saw this offseason of, all right, who has the leverage, who's making the decisions, where's the pressure, things like that. And once it kind of became clear that the Falcons weren't getting maybe the offers that they wanted to before the draft for Kirk and having those negotiations, they were like, look, he is a former Pro Bowl. He was playing at an MVP level before he got hurt, before he came here in Atlanta. There is still a ton of value to, again, a young quarterback, to a kind of a new offense, to have this kind of insight in the room. The Falcons have a lot of former quarterbacks on their staff, TJ Yates, Zach Robinson himself, now Kirk Cousins. Like, that's a lot of infrastructure. DJ Williams, the quarterback's coach, like, they wanted to surround Michael Penix with as much knowledge as they could, right? And Kirk was still part of that. And his kind of from Kirk's vantage point, like, he has been great in the locker room. Like, he has been great inside of the facility. He has still been kind of the consummate teammate. So as long as that was not a negative, I think the Falcons were comfortable with that. So you go through the draft, then you get into training camp, and then the leverage starts to swing back to the organization's favor, because now, as quarterbacks are going down around the league, as you point out, like, if you're the Bengals and you are, Zach Taylor, and you're looking at kind of like what happened last year, and we got to make a playoff run here, and there is real pressure, and that does change maybe the math for some of these teams. So nothing coming from the Falcons in terms of, hey, we are actively really pushing to trade Kirk. Everything has been as it stands. They are comfortable with the situation being what it is. However, Michael Penix is still your starter. And if a team wants to move Atlanta off of their current position, I think the Falcons would be open to receiving those calls, as they have been throughout this whole time. What will it take to get them to move off of this position, I do think is changing a little bit, and the price tag might be going up, especially if a couple more quarterbacks get hurt and a bidding war could start. So that's kind of the latest. There really is kind of no news, but the occurrences or the events happening around the league, I do think you're going to start maybe seeing that impact this at some point.
Yeah, they could get an offer that knocks their socks off, right? Because
Potentially.
Yeah, so that'll be an interesting storyline to keep an eye on. Will McFadden here from the Atlanta Falcons website, senior editor and writer. You mentioned Atlanta's offense has the potential to be one of the top in the National Football League, and I agree with you, because I'd love to get your opinion on Bijan Robinson, because pound for pound, I mean, like, this is the new season. Last year, Saquon had the 2K and all that, but he's not really been off to a hot start. And you look around the league, like a skilled position player. We saw CMC in action last night. He's pretty good too. But Bijan, to me, is right up there pound for pound.
Absolutely. He was named the NFC Offensive Player of the Month. Wednesday, I believe. So that was a pretty good. No, it was Thursday. My mistake. That's a pretty good indicator of just the start that Bijan has gotten off to this season. Before last night's game, and Christian McCaffrey was great in that as well, particularly as a receiver. That has been kind of the strong suit for Bijan so far this year. He's already got 2 games with over 100 receiving yards. Coming into last night, he was leading all players with 584 yards from scrimmage, and he's scored 2 touchdowns. I mean, like, he is on pace, and on pace through 4 games is really only that. It's on pace through 4 games, so there's a lot of season left to go. But he is set to finish with 2,482 yards, so just shy of 2,500 total yards from scrimmage, which would be the second most in a single season in NFL history. So when you say, is he like the best player pound for pound, I would throw my hat in that ring right now, because he is everything that kind of Christian McCaffrey has been. He's just younger. He's just fresher. He doesn't have that built up kind of like scar tissue that McCaffrey has developed kind of over the years. And he is still a phenomenal player in his own right. But really, it's the thing I keep pointing out to everybody, and by this point, it's well known. It's just kind of his feel in space and his ability to kind of string together the movements in a way where he always feels spring loaded and ready to go. Like that touchdown run that he had against Washington, where he kind of shakes like 3 guys loose, then spins, then goes into the end zone. He makes a jump cut where he literally jumps to his left, lands on his left leg, and never even puts his right leg on the ground, bends his knee and cuts back to the right on one leg. And then he just trucks forward and does the spin move and does the rest. So he is exceptional in kind of that way, but then he's also added the receiving element to his game. He's a really good pass protector. That was something as a rookie that was a real liability for him that he got way better at last year, and he's continued to improve this year. And the final piece is just really the explosive element to it, which he has improved this season. I do think he leads kind of all running backs with like 5 plays of 10 plus yards or 20 plus yards. I don't have that stat right off the hand, but we did see him get tackled before scoring that touchdown on the big reception against Washington. So there's still a little bit work to be done there. But by and large, like I do think he is kind of the best all-around player in the league right now. And Raheem Morris even said so last week. So, you know, he definitely agrees with me there.
Yeah, Raheem Morris, pride of West Orange, New Jersey here. We're broadcasting live from Jersey. And, you know, I'll tell you, I would take Bijan, if I had to pick one skill position player, non-quarterback in the National Football League to build around, it would be Bijan Robinson for my liking anyway. He's a joy to watch, and you talk about there's still room for improvement. That's scary for the NFL because, I mean, this guy, I mean, I think he's going to win Offensive Player of the Year. Could he compete for MVP? We shall see. But, yeah, he is just now entering his prime, I believe, and he's going to be a good one for a long time to come. All right, let's talk about some of the rookies this year because Xavier Watts is making plays. I love this Billy Bowman coming out. I thought that was a shrewd draft pick. And, of course, they had 2 first-round picks that they used. So what's the rookie report there in Atlanta?
Oh, amazing. Like it is an A, if not an A plus at this point, because the Falcons really, I think, wanted to infuse a different identity into their defense. And in fact, this is great timing for us to have this chat because on Tuesday, our editorial team just kind of released a little project from the first 4 weeks. And it's a deep dive into Jeff Ulbricht's defensive philosophy called Heart, Mind, Fist. So the 3 members of our team each took one of those words and kind of defined what it meant. And the rookies have played a huge role in just kind of this transition from last year to this year. I kind of want to start with Billy Bowman, who was the last of the 4 defensive rookies picked for Atlanta here, but you can just feel his intensity, his love for the game, which they're all kind of cliches, but when you watch him play, it kind of extends beyond the cliche. You understand why the cliche even exists in the first place, because there was a play early that Washington, it may have been on their very first possession, kind of got Deebo Samuel in motion, clear into the flats across the other side of the field, and wanted to get him the ball in space, let him turn upfield and maybe create a big play after the catch, as he does better than most in this league. And who's with him step for step across the field in motion and right there to make a play? It's Billy Bowman Jr. AJ Terrell had a very similar play, I think, his rookie year against Justin Jefferson. And it was kind of eye-opening to me. This was the exact same thing. And it was like, man, this guy is seeing things. He moves around the field well. And then he's just not afraid when he's kind of heat-seeking missile locked in to go and run through the tackle. So he has been great. He's forced a turnover so far. Xavier Watts he should have probably like 4 interceptions at this point. And if we're talking about a rookie who has 4 interceptions through 4 games, I mean, that's like leading Good Morning Football, right? Like they're going to be sitting there talking about it nonstop. And it's the ability to put himself in position to make these plays that I think has Jeff Ulbrich, Raheem Morris, and the rest of kind of Atlanta's staff really excited, because they know what they have in Jesse Bates, and they kind of feel like they have a similar player in Xavier Watts, somebody who just sees the field really well, has played in a lot of high-level football games at college, comes from Marcus Freeman's program. They teach him really well. So they feel like he is a pro's pro already in year 1. And they, I think have really high hopes for just what he can be over the next 5, 6, 7, 10 years, hopefully. And then your 2 first-round picks, right? The pass rush for Atlanta overall has really taken a step forward. It's been kind of by committee, like that last year's draft class with Ruka Roro and Brandon Dorless. They didn't see a ton of snaps in year 1. So this offseason and in training camp, Raheem Morris was saying we kind of feel like we have 2 rookie classes coming in, and you felt that. You have felt those guys make that big contribution. And we have seen James Pierce Jr. and Jalen Walker make some disruptive plays, even if neither of them have like 4 sacks at this point in the season. I would expect them to, continue to pile up the pressures, continue to pile up the sacks. They may not end this year, either one of the rookies with, double-digit sacks, but I think their impact has helped the group overall really increase the pressure on opposing quarterbacks. And I wouldn't be shocked if, James Pierce finishes with 6.5 sacks this season and Jalen Walker's like at 5.5 or 7, and we're looking by and large, feeling really excited about what those guys can be in year 2 moving forward, because they have flashed early on.
Yeah, a lot of good, young, fresh bodies along that defensive line. And just for the record, we did have a first-round grade on Billy Bowman. So
wow, okay,
yeah, we love this guy coming out. I think he got dinged a little bit for his size, but man,
yeah, shorter arms, a little bit concerns in tackling, especially. But I feel like at least so far those have proven to be a little overblown.
Yeah, he did get knocked for some missed tackles there, but he's always given full effort, always shows up around the ball. You see it, sack, interception, playmaker on the defensive side. He's a good. That might be the deepest safety room in the National Football League. Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's crazy because they signed Jordan Fuller in the offseason, right? Who was a starter for the Super Bowl team in LA with Raheem Morris. And it was like, okay, he and Jesse Bates, and then you had DeMarco Hellams, a year 3 guy from Alabama, late round pick coming back off injury. It's like they like him. Maybe he could develop. And then you go out and add 2 guys in the draft. All of a sudden, yeah, there's 5 safeties that you kind of like in that room. So it has got to be one of the deepest position groups in the league.
Yeah, Terry Fontenot deserves some credit for that one. We're talking to Will McFadden, winding down here. Well, how about an unsung hero on the team that we should know about? You got one for us?
Yeah, I do. I would say Divine Diablo. He has been somebody who they plugged in right next to Caden Ellis, and it kind of did 2 things. I think it allows Caden Ellis to continue to operate in that uber versatile role that we saw Zach Bond operate in last year, that Caden did as well, where he's both a pass rusher, but then, run defender. He's able to drop into coverage. Any given play, you kind of don't know what he's doing. So by putting somebody in like Divine Diablo in there, who is exceptional in coverage as a former safety, and really good at diagnosing run plays, like his nose for the football, his ability to see the flow happening in front of him and then knife in there and make a stop is really, really stands out to me. But specifically, I was talking with D. Alford, who filled in at outside corner with AJ Terrell down the last couple of games. And he said that Divine Diablo is maybe one of the best players at defending the dig route that he's ever been around, which is kind of that deep 12 to 15 yard in that is a late breaking and gives quarterbacks options over the middle of the field. His ability to sit in that zone with the length that he possesses gives the cornerbacks for Atlanta more confidence, because they feel they can play a little bit more aggressively, knowing that he's going to take away that window. So you see how just adding that one piece into the kind of the middle of Atlanta's defense allows for more optionality with their pieces around him. So I think that Divine Diablo has kind of quietly really helped this defense take a little bit of a step forward.
Yeah, he's caught my attention, and that's a credit to the coaching staff for identifying the position switch there. He looks like he bulked up a little bit. He's got a tremendous physique too, man. I remember this guy all ripped, jacked up coming out, and it's good. It's good to see him playing a key role there for Atlanta. All right, before we get you out of here, what's the outlook? They're coming off the bye week. They're going to have Buffalo next week. They're a Super Bowl contender. Can Atlanta hang in the same arena, do you think?
That's going to be a great measuring stick game, right? Because I think if we get the defense has been solid so far. So if the defense kind of continues to play the way that it has been, I like their ability to stick around in this game. To me, it is going to be on Atlanta's offense, right? I think Buffalo, I was just checking before we hopped on, they have the number 1 EPA in the league on offense right now. So I do expect this to be a points game. I think you can get up into the 30s potentially. So what kind of offensive game plan does Atlanta have? Are they able to build off of this past performance against Washington, add some new wrinkles in there? Because I do think the talent exists on Atlanta's roster to be able to go toe-to-toe with a team like Buffalo. there's just a lot in Buffalo's favor. You've got the confidence. You've done it before. You do have Josh Allen, who is more experienced than Michael Penix Jr., X, Y, and Z. Like, it's a great measuring stick game. At this point in time, Buffalo is Buffalo, right? So you've got to prove that you can knock off a team like that. But we have seen Atlanta rise to that occasion before. A lot of people were expecting Minnesota to kind of be the better team in that one and maybe do to Atlanta what Atlanta did to Minnesota. So I'm not going to count out this group by any means. However, they need to be locked in. They need to be ready to go because Buffalo, as you said, is a Super Bowl contender. They have been for the last few years. So if you want to be there, you got to beat this team. And I'm really excited because I do think you'll see a locked in Atlanta team. And when they're locked in, I do think this team can be as good as any in the league.
Yeah, it would be a great momentum when coming out of the bye week and maybe propel them as the season wears on. All right. Well, this was great stuff. Tell the listening audience at home, you mentioned the Jeff Albright piece over there on the website. I'm a big fan of Coach, by the way. What else you got cooking over on the Atlanta Falcons website?
Yeah. So I mentioned that Heart, Mind, Fist piece with Jeff Ulbrich. That's a great bye week read for any Falcons fans out there. Then we've also got Falcons Final Whistle is our post-game podcast, taking a break this week, as you can understand, but we're back Monday mornings. You can get us on your drive home. And then we've got the Friday 5 and Falcons Audible, which are our two kind of midweek shows on the podcast network. So if you like listening to podcasts like this one, go check those out as well. But yeah, you can find me on Twitter otherwise at Will McFadden. And yeah, you'll catch everything I'm doing there. So Rick, thank you so much for inviting me on. This was a great chance to chat with you.
Love it, man. I appreciate the time. And maybe we'll tap into you when those Falcons reach the playoffs later on in January.
from your lips, my friend.
All right, Will, man. Enjoy the football weekend and the rest of your bye week. And take care, man. We'll talk to you down the line. Appreciate the time.
Of course, buddy. Anytime.
All right, there you have Will McFadden from the Atlanta Falcons website making his all-access football debut here on the Big Show. Man, wow, that was a lot of great insight, and the hits just keep on coming. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, Jason B. Hirschborn. I'm sorry for messing that up, Jason, but we'll get it right when you come back, and when we come back right after the break. Buckle up, everybody. Hey, RIC and a place to be. Ric Serritella checking in from the legendary Jersey Shore for the world-famous All-Access Football, and you're tuned in to the All-Access Football Daily Show, our newest venture here at the world-famous All-Access Football, read by all 32 NFL teams and 50,000 subscribers from around the world. And I've been blessed and fortunate enough to work in this great game of football for the past 2 decades. It's our 24th season of providing you independent analysis when it comes to the NFL draft and everything pigskin, whether it's the NFL, college football, NFL draft, CFL, UFL. We'll be with you each step of the way, especially for draft season when we really get into high mode. Of course, it's all brought to you by the 2026 NFL Draft Bible, published in April, featuring over 500 in-depth scouting reports with our boots-on-the-ground analysis. We'll be on location at the All-Star Games, the NFL Scouting Combine, the Pro Day circuit, counting you down to that 2026 NFL Draft in Pittsburgh. And be sure you check us out over at allaccessfootball.com. We've got a great promo discount for you listeners at home. If you enter our promo code RICVIP, you'll get a 30% discount off of all of our premium content. You'll unlock the magic. Get our NFL Draft Insider Reports, Scouting Notebook, of course, the World Football All-Access Football Report published on Wednesday. It's your new home for real football talk. So follow along, give us a shout. We hope you're enjoying the show. If you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or X, please give it a like, a share, a subscribe, and we'll be with you each and every day here, 7 days a week, live, 10 a.m. Eastern, no days off, rain, sleet, hail, snow. The show must go on. For Ric Serritella and the All Access Football Daily Show, keep it locked, everybody. All right, we're back at it again. All right, seeing a place to be. Ric Serritella, telling it like it is when it comes to the NFL draft and everything pigskin on our 33rd edition of the All Access Football Daily Show. We're here live each and every day, 7 days a week, 10 a.m. Eastern, no days off. It is your home for real football talk. And what a great job out of Will McFadden, that last segment with the Atlanta Falcons senior writer and editor, getting the scoop on the Atlanta Falcons during their bye week. Adams exploits chiming in saying Saquon's running well. It has more to do with the Eagles' offensive line. He's got a point there, but the stats are down. For me, Bijan Robinson, pound for pound, if I had to build a team around one skill position player that wasn't a quarterback, for me, it would be Bijan Robinson. So great stuff out of Will McFadden there. Our next guest is an award AP winning NFL and college football writer, a member of the Pro Football Writers Association, formerly of NFL.com, Sports Illustrated, SB Nation, and now the publisher of The Leap for the famous Green Bay Packers. Of course, the newsletter over on Substack. Make sure you check him out. Also making his All Access Football debut. It's Jason B. Hirschborn here on the All Access Football Daily Show. Good morning, Jason.
Good morning, Rick. How's it going?
Good, man. Thanks for joining us here. And I know it's the bye week. We dragged you guys out of the bye week and onto the show, and we appreciate it, giving us an inside perspective with the Green Bay Packers. Of course, you do a wonderful job with the Leap, fellow Substack newsletter, by the way, as is All Access Football. So let's get into it, because the Packers, to me, it's been a tale of two teams through the first two games. The last two games, it looked like legitimate Super Bowl contenders out of the gate. The last 2 weeks, not so much. Who are, and they've had some injuries, but who are the real Green Bay Packers?
I understand why the question is set up as this is a story of two different teams. I think it's actually really been the same team with just some edge case situations they propped up over the last two games. You look at weeks 1 and 2, they beat one of the best teams in the NFL in the Detroit Lions and did so in a dominating fashion. The following week, or really just a few days later, that was the Thursday night game, they beat a playoff team from a year ago, and again did so in a fashion where they had control of the game the entire time, and they looked like a really dominant squad. Then they did lose in week 3 against the Browns, but if you watch that game, it wasn't until they threw that really unforced interception that the game ever really appeared as though it was, in the balance for Green Bay. And then this past week against the Dallas Cowboys, there were the injuries. I know you mentioned them at the top, but also they were dealing with injuries in the game. It wasn't just those offensive line injuries they entered the game with. It wasn't just, the wide receiver injuries that they had, again, entering the game. It was, they lose their at least most athletic, most talented defensive tackle in the middle of the game to a knee injury. And then at a certain point with all the snaps that were played, this game went into and all the way through overtime, they just kind of ran out of bodies along the defensive front. So that's why you see things like 40 points given up in one game when they'd only given up 41 points the previous 3 weeks combined. So to a certain degree, I don't actually think that this is really a tale of two teams. I think it's one team that has run itself into a few weird situations over the last 2 weeks. If you thought that they were a Super Bowl contender after weeks 1 and 2, I don't think that should change at this point, given how those games unfolded.
All right, fair enough. That's why we bring guys like you on the show to enlighten us. And, they ran out of bodies, they ran out of time, and here they are now.
Literally both in that final game, yes.
But, obviously the big storyline, though, was Micah Parsons. And I look at it very similar to a Reggie White type of acquisition that's kind of created a lot of excitement. You see the pass rush, and you kind of see like the other players. You tell me, I feel like the other players gravitate towards his energy, and he's just been a wonderful addition.
There's no way to underplay the Micah Parsons addition. This was a defense that last year was top 10 by basically any advanced metric you would look at, but there was clearly a line of demarcation between that unit and the truly top units in the league. And one of, if not the biggest reason for that, was the pass rush. It was a group collectively that, it wasn't like the worst in the league, but we're talking about decidedly middle of the pack in terms of consistent pressure being generated. Then you bring in Micah Parsons and all of those pieces slot into place. Rashawn Gary, who had been a very good edge defender during his career, now becomes effectively the number 2 for the first time since, I guess, maybe like his second season in the league. He, going into week 4, was the league leader in sacks. He's still high on the list. And it's not even just when Micah Parsons is on the field. Like 2 of his 4.5 sacks so far happened without Parsons actually there. So his play, not even just when Parsons is there, has improved. And you certainly see what it's done to that defensive front. I mean, they are able to pretty much generate pressure from any version of their 4-man front. And, they still blitz at times. They'll still do the simulated pressures that they did at the end of last season to overcome some of those pressure issues that they were having. But for the most part, they're sending 4, and it has worked in no small part to what Micah Parsons has provided on a down-to-down basis.
Yeah, it's been exciting to watch, and I do think they are legitimate Super Bowl contenders. I haven't wavered. I'm not moving off that, but I think Micah Parsons goes a long ways. And how's the back holding up, by the way? I haven't heard too much of it being an issue. Is it good to go, or is he taking injections still? What's the status there?
I actually don't think that he's taking an injection. I know that there was a report going into week 1 that he might have to. I don't believe that actually transpired.
Oh, interesting.
The back injury is not like fake in the sense that it was like a manufactured thing to keep him off the field when he was still in Dallas. Maybe something that was played up a little more while he was there. But, he's shown up on the injury report at several times with that back injury. He's also come off the injury report with it too. So I would say it's something that's worth monitoring, but it remains sort of like not a front line issue for them unless something gets aggravated. And to date, it hasn't happened.
All right, very good. We're talking to Jason B. Hirschborn here. The Leap over on Substack does a great job covering Lambeau and the Green Bay Packers. And I know you just did a piece over there on the most important non-quarterbacks, reevaluating this Packers roster. So give us a quick rundown. Who are some of the cornerstone players for the listening audience at home that we should know about?
For context in that piece, it was looking at something that myself and Peter Bukowski, my co-founder at The Leap, had done in the offseason. This was before the Micah Parsons trade. Obviously, Micah Parsons would have appeared on that list of most important non-quarterbacks had we done it with knowledge he was going to be there. But the point of the exercise was to figure out where sort of the pivot points on that roster were. They're like, this part of the roster is great, but if this player were to become unavailable for whatever the reason, that the roster would really hurt. And for the most part, it came down to those frontline defensive players and Zach Tom, the right tackle. Now, Zach Tom has in fact missed most of the season to date. He played week 1, got hurt near the end, didn't play week 2, tried to play week 3, lasted literally 1 snap before he had to go back out again, and didn't play in week 4. And you can see what has happened with that offense in his absence. Now, it is still one of the best offenses in the league, but the way that it functions is significantly different. Weeks 1 and 2, when they were in one case playing with him virtually the entire game, or in week 2, when they weren't super concerned about the pass rush, this is an offense that was literally more vertical than any other unit in the league. Jordan Love had an average depth of target that exceeded every other quarterback with like whatever the minimum amount of attempts was. And then weeks 3 and weeks 4, when Zach Tom is effectively not there, and they're playing, in the case of Cleveland Browns, one of the most talented defensive fronts with Myles Garrett there, the offense shifts gears. It was still able to put up a lot of good yards, but it was not going vertically. It was a lot of short passes, a lot of stuff done in the screen game. The average depth of target just plummeted. They had to work around that absence. So, if Zach Tom comes back after the bye, I don't think that's going to be a huge issue for them, as long as he can stay on the field from that point, because he has this like oblique tear. You don't really know how those things are going to hold up. But if they were to miss him for an extended period of time beyond what they've currently lost, I do think you're going to see more issues with that passing game, because even though it's clearly a unit that can put up huge points, I mean, we just saw it this past week against the Dallas Cowboys, you want to be able to attack vertically, and they just haven't been able to with him not there, at least not against some of the better pass rushes in the league. Going further down, like Rashawn Gary was on that list. I would say that he's probably not going to be quite as high anymore for the reasons we already stated. Just Micah Parsons being there, it just sort of socializes the burden on that defensive front. Like, you just don't have to do as much when you're Rashawn Gary when you have Micah Parsons there. The other defender that we had on the list, or I had on the list, Edgerrin Cooper, their second-year linebacker, I do think he remains extremely valuable. Now, he's actually coming off maybe his worst game, not just of the season, but like of his career. But over the course of not just this season and last, he has been arguably their best overall defender. It's been him or Xavier McKinney, the other defensive player that's worth mentioning here, that has really stabilized the unit. Like, Edgerrin Cooper can be a meaningful part of their pass rush. They've used him in some of those blitz packages, some of those simulated pressures. They also, a lot of times, leave him one-on-one in coverage, especially when they're blitzing with other players. He does both those things extremely well, which there's not a long list of linebackers for which you can say that about, right? Like we saw like last night, as we're speaking now, Fred Warner go and cover a wide receiver on the boundary. That's not something that you really see from off-ball linebackers very often. Edgerrin Cooper is one of the few players for which that can also be true. And they haven't used him in that exact capacity yet, but it's something that they could experiment with if they needed to. So again, it's really about those more versatile pieces on the defense. And again, their best offensive lineman is Zach Tom.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Edgerrin Cooper. Always have been, and I'm not going to make too much over one game, but man, they got playmakers in every level up front. Gary and Parsons and Cooper in the second level, and you mentioned McKinney on the back end. What do you have? 8 interceptions last year coming over from Big Blue. So a lot of weaponry here for the Green Bay Packers. Jason, this has been phenomenal insight here. One quick question about the wide receivers. You mentioned they can still score points. And I think it's Jaden Reed and Christian Watson who are currently out.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Could you see Green Bay making a deal? I see a couple rumors out there about them possibly trading for a wide receiver. Or are they going to be good with what they got, you think?
Well, Christian Watson could return as soon as their next game. They've already, played 4 games. He's on the PUP list. He's eligible to come off, and now they're on their bye. So it's additional time to rest. At least according to the coaching staff, Watson had been ahead of schedule anyway. There was some discussion, not a lot, but some discussion. They might even be able to come off the PUP before week 1. Obviously, that didn't happen. But given that that was the discussion at that time, and given that there hasn't been, at least to the best of our knowledge, any setback in the time since, I think he's going to come back either for week 6 or I think a little more likely week 7. Now you've added the biggest, maybe the fastest receiver in that group back into the fold. And I think that does, again, assuming that some of those other pieces fall in place as we discussed with the offensive line, I think that would open things up for them. And then you have other things too, like Matthew Golden, you've started to see really come on. Like this past game, he on the Packers' first drive has that 45 or 46-yard reception, like right out of the gate. So you're seeing growth there. You're expecting Watson back soon. Romeo Doubs has been extremely consistent this season. Dontavian Wicks, who had drop issues a year ago, has not dropped a pass and has also made some very key receptions for them as well. So you look at all those receivers, and we haven't even talked about the tight ends. I mean, Tucker Kraft has developed into one of the better tight ends in the league. I don't think there's really an issue, like a manpower issue there. It's just getting those guys together and getting the passing game to a point where you feel comfortable calling some of those deeper developing plays. I mean, a year ago, maybe their most commonly called shot concept was dagger. Very common concept in the league. You see it. Literally every team runs it. They ran that more than any other major concept in that playbook. This year, they've run it, at least by my charting, 3 times through 4 weeks. Very strange. And I think the offensive line is the story behind that, right? Like if you don't feel like you're going to get the protection to get that play to work, it doesn't make sense to call it. I think if they're able to, again, get the health along the offensive line in a position where they trust the protection and, they get Watson back in the not too distant future, I think you're going to see a lot of those things come together. So I don't think it's very likely that they would trade for a receiver. It's not entirely impossible if after Watson returns and some of these other pieces, fall into place, maybe they look to move one of the receivers that they have, if there's something out there that makes sense for them. So an acquisition at that position doesn't seem terribly likely to me, but injuries can sometimes change the narrative here, right? Like,
Sure.
Jaden Reed was a big part of this. He's expected to miss, all of October and maybe a good chunk of November as he recovers from a collarbone break. So we'll have to see how this plays out. If they have more injuries, maybe that changes. Right now, I don't think that's an area of concern for them.
Yeah, and it's amazing. You rattle off all these receivers, and they've all got to be like 25 or younger. It's just like an incredible.
Literally all of them are 26 or under, and I think most of them are under the age of 24 as we're speaking right now. So it is a very young unit, but it's also a unit that's been tested, right? Like other than Matthew Golden and Savion Williams, these are guys who have played multiple seasons. I mean, Jaden Reed has been their leading receiver each of the past 2 years, and he's only a third-year player now. So it's both a young group and an experienced group at the same time. It's just a very strange thing in the NFL.
Yeah, an interesting dynamic. All right, last one for you, Jason. Before we let you go, give us your gauge of the temperature in the pecking order. The NFC seems like really loaded this year. You got the Eagles, the Bucks. We saw the 49ers aren't going away. they did well against the Detroit Lions, but where does the Green Bay Packers fall in the power rankings, in your opinion?
Whatever you view as that first tier of NFC teams, I think they belong in there because there's not really a lot of them. Like, the Rams have a lot of talent, but they also have now whatever it is, like 2 losses, and there's been some close games too. The Detroit Lions are up there. The Packers have already beaten the Detroit Lions. Now the Eagles are there. They're currently undefeated, but the Packers get a chance at them in the not too distant future. They play them, I think it's like November or late October, and they get that game at home. So that lines up, at least based on what we know right now, fairly well for them. They're just, of the top teams, I don't think if you're Green Bay, you have to like truly fear any of them. You know that you can beat them. Now they can beat you too. It's not a guarantee either way, but I think whatever that upper crust of the NFC is, the Packers are a part of that, at least as they're constituted right now.
Yeah, I think so. Awesome stuff, Jason. Tell the listening audience at home what you got cooking over on The Leap, where they can find all your great work.
Well, you should go to The Leap directly. The website is theleap.football. We got that really cool like .football domain name.
That, yeah.
You can find me on social media at by_JBH, or in some places by JBH without that underscore. So check us out there. You can check out my partner, Peter Bukowski. He and I share the responsibilities at The Leap. We obviously cover the Green Bay Packers, but we cover the NFL nationally as well. And in the offseason, we dive as deep as anybody on the draft. So check us out. I don't think you'll be disappointed.
Love it. Doing great job, man. And we'll circle back to you come draft season. We'd love to talk some draft with you.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on, Rick.
Yeah, absolutely. Enjoy the rest of your bye week and all the football action. And we'll be buckled up and geared up for a long Green Bay Packers run this season. I have a feeling.
I think you might be right on that. Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. You got it. There goes Jason B. Hirschborn of The Leap, doing a great job. And man, I forgot to ask him where I can get me one of those shirts over there. We'll have to go check out the Leap merchandise store over there on Substack. And really appreciate the time from all of our guests today. We went a little bit over time in this power of hour. And, Adam, Micah, the stats might not say that he's playing spectacular, but I just think his impact, his presence, how he's kind of risen up the players around him, I think is the impact that you're starting to see. And once Micah gets a little bit more acclimated, I think the stats will come. So we appreciate all the feedback in the chat room. This was another hour of power here on October 3rd, 2025, our 33rd hour of power, just flying by in the books. I know I say it every day, but for Adam Exploits in the chat room, Will McFadden from Atlanta Falcons Media, and Jason B. Hirschborn from The Leap, we thank everybody for tuning in for this edition of the All Access Football Daily Show. We'll be back on Saturday for the college football pregame show. A little bit of NFL draft slant. Our residential scout, Russell Landy, former NFL, CFL, XFL scout, will join us tomorrow on Saturday. Of course, we did get that London game prediction in. If you're just tuning into the show, we're going to isolate all of our guest interviews over on the YouTube. We also went over NFL news and notes, and we did a little Friday Night Light draft watch for the games in action tonight at the top of the show. And of course, Sunday we'll have our NFL around the league pick'em while the London game is streaming. And I guess we'll be on the air the next 3 weeks with the ball game on, because I think London, this is the first of 3 straight games out there in London. So, hey, that about does it. We'll be back and try to do better tomorrow. Once again, thank you for watching the All Access Football Daily Show. I was your host, Ric Serritella, and we'll see you on Saturday, everybody. Hey, RIC in a place to be. Ric Serritella checking in from the legendary Jersey Shore for the world-famous All Access Football, and you're tuned in to the All Access Football Daily Show, our newest venture here at the world-famous All Access Football, read by all 32 NFL teams and 50,000 subscribers from around the world. And I've been blessed and fortunate enough to work in this great game of football for the past 2 decades. It's our 24th season of providing you independent analysis when it comes to the NFL draft and everything pigskin, whether it's the NFL, college football, NFL draft, CFL, UFL. We'll be with you each step of the way, especially for draft season when we really get into high mode. Of course, it's all brought to you by the 2026 NFL Draft Bible, published in April featuring over 500 in-depth scouting reports with our boots-on-the-ground analysis. We'll be on location at the All-Star Games, the NFL Scouting Combine, the Pro Day circuit, counting you down to that 2026 NFL Draft in Pittsburgh. And be sure you check us out over at allaccessfootball.com. We've got a great promo discount for you listeners at home. If you enter our promo code RICVIP, you'll get a 30% discount off of all of our premium content. You'll unlock the magic. Get our NFL Draft Insider Reports, Scouting Notebook, of course, the World Football All Access Football Report published on Wednesday. It's your new home for real football talk. So follow along, give us a shout. We hope you're enjoying the show. If you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or X, please give it a like, a share, a subscribe, and we'll be with you each and every day here, 7 days a week, live, 10 a.m. Eastern, no days off, rain, sleet, hail, snow. The show must go on. For Ric Serritella and the All Access Football Daily Show, keep it locked, everybody.
You are watching All Access Football.